to talk to this group of educators about communications and using data and how that data can influence how districts communicate and how they should communicate. I'll look at the issue of inappropriate relationships between teachers and students and what the data shows us in that regard and how districts need to communicate with parents aggressively in those cases. And then I'll also look at such things as how the presence of a cell phone in the hands of every student, every employee at a school changes things in regards to communication, how districts have to be much faster in their communication with parents when something happens at a school. And I'll talk to them about how leadership of schools and teachers all have to understand that with the presence of those devices in kids' hands and other teachers' hands, that they should consider themselves on worldwide broadcasts all the time at any point. That changes the game for educators because they can't sit back and think that they're in a quiet time at a school, nobody's watching. With this, everybody's watching all the time. And that's a good thing, actually.
Has it been a slow learning process with this new digital age with a lot of educators and superintendents, or do you think it's they've really acclimated to it in a good way?
Well, with some it's been a little slow, but others have acclimated very quickly. It has been something of a generational thing with some older educators who've been a little bit slower to come around, and you'll see in some of the things that I talk about in the presentation that the kids remind the educators that there's a very big difference in generations there in some cases. But educators are aggressively getting on this issue, and smart leadership at schools are telling both teachers and students alike, look, don't try to think that you can misbehave or do something inappropriate, because someone somewhere will see that, and then that's going to be available for anyone to see. And again, I think that's a good thing. It just brings more openness, more transparency to public schools, and public schools need that.
Is there a way to kind of implement or use these devices in a positive way for schools?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Schools can always put things up on Facebook, on all kinds of social media, Snapchat, everything that they can do, they should be doing, getting out information about what the good things that are going on at schools. And districts can show how quickly they are on top of situations that occur in schools by sending out information from devices to parents all the time. So there's many ways to do it. The devices should always be a good thing. Districts have to be aware of the fact that sometimes they can be used for negative, and as long as they're out there putting out the appropriate information to the public, they don't have anything to worry about.
As a communications expert, I'm sure you've seen a lot of different changes over the years, but how does this new age kind of compare to maybe the old days of communicating just through either talking or writing, and being able to evolve with these changes?
There is no comparison. The ever-presence of devices, the complete ability of anyone to broadcast worldwide at any time, that changes everything for schools and for students as they communicate. It argues for, and I think is a good effort to, or it makes it easier for us to be much more transparent in education, much more open, and that is frankly what parents like me want to see. I have a son who's a junior in high school. I want to see open, transparent communication coming from my school and back and forth with me, so that we all know what's going on. And I think educators are now adapting to that really quickly.
And finally, outside of everything that you've touched on, what do you hope that these superintendents take away from what you talk about today?
Just that they have to be mindful of aggressively working to put out the information about the great things that teachers are doing, the great things that schools are doing, because I consider in public education that we're in a campaign of sorts. We're in a campaign for the hearts and minds of the public. If we sit back and we don't tell our story about the great things that are going on in schools, then those who have a negative voice will win the day. And we cannot afford for the public to withdraw its support from public education because they only ever hear bad things about schools. If that happens, a lot of kids are going to be hurt. The public schools are the great saving grace for children all over this country. And so we need to tell that story. And I think that's the biggest thing.